Live from the top of the beautiful towers at Merle Hay Mall, all 6 stories of it, it's FaithWorks Live with host Michael Damastis.
And we're so glad that you're joining us today on FaithWorks Live as we sit on top of the Tower of Truth here at Merle Hay, along beautiful, scenic Merle Hay Road, where you can take a romantic drive with your wife and stop at any one of the beautiful scenic overlooks to see the fast food restaurants and abandoned buildings, big parking lots. It's just a wonderful drive, and I encourage you to take that. But we, as I said, are glad that you're joining us. And I started this yesterday, and I want to tell you about something, and that is that we are wanting to know why your mom is the best mom. So send us a brief text here to the studio and tell us why your mom is the very best mom. What I want you to do is just put a short little text together, and when I say short little text, it doesn't need to be, a giant story, just a short little text, why my mom is the best mom, and I want you to send that to 515-727-5842. And when you send that in, on Thursday, we're going to pick a winner out of all those stories that we're receiving, and if you win, you're going to get a dozen roses and all the stuff that comes with that, and whatever, the baby spray and the vase and the stuff, and
what's baby spray?
I don't know.
Breath?
Baby's breath. There you go.
That's what he meant.
There you go. Okay, I'm not a flower guy. I'm a guy. So you can win a dozen roses to give to your mom on Mother's Day, and you'll look like a hero. So that's the whole goal here. Send us a text, 515-727-5842. Do that right now and tell us why your mom is the very best mom. We want to hear from you on that. Well, today is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, in the studio with me, I always have my daughter-in-law, Rachel Damastis. She works at Agape Pregnancy Center, and she's joining us again. How is your week going, Rachel?
It's going great.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep. And also joining us today is a lady by the name of Laura Limmex. And Laura heads up a ministry called Restored by Grace, and that is out of Ankeny, Iowa. So, Laura, tell me a little bit about yourself, and tell me, if you would be so kind, introduce us to yourself by letting us know the most important thing about you. How did you become a Christian?
Wow. Well, that probably could start my story, because I grew up in a wonderful Christian home. However, as a teenager, I found myself making some choices that I had been taught not to make.
Right.
And that kind of led me down on the path that we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
But as a result of those poor choices, I did find myself coming back to the church.
Right.
And that was where I found all of the healing and restoration that God wanted to pour out to me, and then pour out through me to help other women.
Wow. Okay. And so tell me about that story.
Yeah.
I mean, just let me know what you're willing to let us know.
Yeah.
It's just me and you and 35,000 people.
Okay. And I shared enough. I don't hold too much back. But like I said, I grew up in a Christian home. But as a teenager, I found myself, first of all, in a relationship I shouldn't have been in. Growing up in a Christian home, had a boyfriend that wasn't, didn't have any of the moral beliefs that I did.
So this is high school?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
And I was pressured by him to become sexually active, and eventually I gave in, and shortly found myself at I was just a few months shy of the age of 17. So I was 16. I found myself in an unplanned pregnancy.
Wow.
And I was scared to tell anybody, because everybody thought I was this good person.
Right.
And so I made the hasty decision to have an abortion. And
can I ask you a couple of questions about that, if
absolutely.
You felt comfortable?
Yes.
So did you tell your parents?
No, not for years.
Not for years. And you were obviously involved in church at the time, committed. Did you go to youth group and all that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so did your pastor teach on this topic? Did you hear a lot of sermons on abortion?
Maybe not necessarily abortion, but obviously I heard things in the youth about, abstinence and remaining pure and all of those things, but not really on the topic of abortion
You
itself.
Didn't hear a lot about life from the church and all that kind of stuff.
No, but I knew abortion was wrong.
Well, sure. And that's
right.
Because I had another young woman on, mutual friend of of Rachel and I, and she shared her story as well of having, and one of the things that kind of just stood out was that she didn't hear a lot from the preacher. And so it was kind of easy for her to turn to Planned Parenthood at the time because she just really never heard a lot about it. And it's not like you. She knew in theory it's wrong.
Right.
But now we're talking reality and practicality. And so it was different when it kind of got worked out in real life. And so
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to pause on that.
No,
but
that's great. That's a great question. So I made the hasty decision for an abortion, and my boyfriend supported me. And when we left the abortion clinic that day, I told him I really didn't want to ever talk about it again. And I asked him not to bring it up or talk to anybody about it. I was convinced I wanted to take that secret to my grave.
Wow.
And, the relationship didn't last much longer. And there'd be times where he would bring that up and I would say, I don't want to talk about it. I refused to let my thoughts and my heart go there. And so for the next several years, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I actually went through a failed marriage, and it was abusive, and I felt like I deserved to be treated poorly.
Oh, man.
I didn't feel I was worthy of being happy. And so, and then I met my husband that I'm married to today, and he was really nice. And I thought, boy, this was kind of strange. And then we were actually married for several years before I told him. And it was one of those things that because in that marriage, we found our way back to church, and I knew I needed to tell him the truth. But I knew at the same time I couldn't prepare him. I knew God had to. And so I spent 6 months just every day praying, Lord, I don't know how this is going to all work out, but I'm going to trust that you're going to, make it happen.
So before you even had the courage to tell him what happened to you, you prayed for 6 months.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I tell ladies, there's people we all need to tell, but it needs to be in God's timing, not our timing.
Well, and I'm sitting here thinking, for folks that are listening out there, that there's 30,000 listener audience out here, and that there's a number of women, they've never told their story.
Yeah.
They're still holding it in.
Yep.
And just even this kind of a conversation is really hard, to even hear this externally from somebody else, because it brings them to themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's challenging. And you waited 6 months. You prayed about it for 6 months. That's huge. Yeah. I hope you're listening to this, because that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Sorry.
No, that's great. And then, so one morning though, I woke up and I knew it was the Holy Spirit, because I usually am not a real early riser. Mm-hmm. And I was laying there and I was thinking, okay, I think I need to talk to him today. And so I'm kind of a planner, and I start thinking about my day, and within probably 20 minutes my husband is awake, and I knew I needed to tell him. And so it was dark, and we were both crying, and I told him.
Wow.
And he responded the way I needed him to respond. Just apologize that I'd never felt I could tell him before, and that was just the beginning of my needing to talk to people. The Lord began to stir my heart to share my story with the women at our church.
Wow.
But before I did that, I knew I had to talk to my parents. I had some close friends that I didn't want them to hear it from anybody but me, and I had to talk to my children.
Wow.
And so those were all conversations that, I was...
Each one probably with its own level of intensity and difficulty.
Absolutely. I mean, here, my mother, I'd spent how many years hiding this from her.
Wow.
And here I was in her home when all this happened. And
how did they take it?
My mom took it like a champ. She responded there again. She responded with such love, and she told me that she was sorry that I didn't feel I could take it to her at that time. And then she called me a week later and told me how she had grieved so much that last week. And that hurt me. But at the same time, that's what needed to happen, because it's the reality of what happened. And so there are healthy things that need to happen when we embrace the truth of our past.
I got to just say, as an aside, how courageous of you.
I'm not going to say it's easy, but, but on the other side, it's good.
Yeah, but it's just an utter act of courage. And from what I'm hearing you say, prompted and guided by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Leading you to this place.
Absolutely.
And so, we talked about an event that occurred in high school. And now you're, how many years later, if I may ask, did this occur?
My child would be 32 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, mean, that's a long time, before you had the courage to kind of come out into this and bring this out into light. Now, I've pastorally, I've said this before to people that when you begin to expose a secret, a dark secret, that it really has so much power over your life. But when you bring it out into the light, it loosens its grip and its hold on you.
Yeah.
And the shame begins to get washed away, and all the other sides. Do you find that to be the truth as well?
Absolutely. Every time I share, I feel like there's more shame that breaks off. And I tell people, holding that secret and holding those lies is like trying to hold that beach ball under the water. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, and that's such a great image.
Yeah,
yes.
It really is. And after I had shared with the ladies at my church, I had someone approach me and say, have you ever done an abortion recovery program? I said, I've never even heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
And so she actually had connections with an organization in Kansas City called If Not for Grace. And I walked through long distance, a program with them that is actually very similar to what I do today. And then I went to what they call a reconciliation weekend, and I also hold those as well. And I really went for me, but all of the time I felt this stirring that there's more to this than just for me. And so it was one of those things that I always tell people, it was so obvious that if I hadn't have followed and done this ministry, it would have been disobedience, because God just opened the doors. And it was...
I've heard other preachers say this, that God never wastes a hurt. And at times what God does is he uses that thing that is so horrible and terrible in your past to become your greatest ministry. And I, just like yesterday, I had Jan Michelson here, which, he didn't have a secret. He had a very public incident occur. He had a stroke. And but he was, now he's able to share the amazing power of God and God's work in his life because of this thing that literally changed the trajectory of his life and how he was living and all those things. And same thing is true, I think, in the same arena about these kinds of dark secrets that we hold. Not only do we find healing once we begin to bring them out into the light, and we seek out God's true forgiveness, and a lot of times that pathway is led by conversations, like you were saying, to other people. Just we're talking to other people about this thing that has happened. And once we do that, it's amazing how God can take that then and turn it around and start to use that to heal other people. Yeah. Not just you, but other people. And that's like really cool, because that's what you're doing. And we're going to continue to talk to Laura Limmex and learn a lot more about Restored by Grace Ministries. It's right here in Ankeny, Iowa. So we're going to, when we come back, I want to ask her some questions about their ministry and who it is that they're targeting and reaching out to.
From Ames to Bondurant to Carlisle and everywhere in between, you are listening to the Truth Network. So come join in on the conversation by texting or calling 515-727-KTIA.
You're listening to FaithWorks Live, and I'm your host, Michael Damastis, and I am so glad that you're joining us on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon. And we have been asking you if you would tell us why it is that your mom is the best mom. And if you tell us that, if you send us a text to 515-727-5842, you're going to have an opportunity to win a dozen roses so that you can go give them to your mom on Mother's Day. And boy, will she just think you're the greatest. So, yes, we want to know why your mom is great, but really your motivation is so that you can get a free gift for your mom for Mother's Day. That's why. So tell us why in a short text, a brief text, why your mom is the best mom. 515-727-5842, and you will win. We'll announce this on Thursday during the show. You'll win a dozen roses that you can give to your mother. That'll be fantastic. So in studio today, joining me is my daughter-in-law, Rachel Damastis, and she works with Agape Pregnancy Center right here in Des Moines, and also Laura Limmex.
And Laura, you were just telling us about your history and your story and how you have created this organization called Restored by Grace, which is a post-abortive women recovery program. Is that a good way of describing it?
That's good.
Will you speak to that? How you came to create this organization from where we left off, and what type of curriculum do you use? How does that work?
Yep. Right now, I use some curriculum called Her Choice to Heal, and I've added some things to it. But really what we do is we start out, we all share our stories because everybody thinks, oh, nobody has gone through what I've gone through. And the first thing they need to understand is, there's a lot of similarities in our story and we can relate to each other. And so that develops a lot of trust in the group right away. And then we just start looking at all of the ways that we've denied the truth about our abortion. And they're given an assignment one week actually to just do a little research on their own, because what we find is they weren't given very much information about their abortion. When you go in for a surgery, there's an explanation of here's what's going to happen. When you go in for an abortion, you don't get any of that. Along with just poor bedside manners. And so we want to talk about what happened that day. And
they don't even explain the procedure to you?
No.
Wow.
No.
Man, it's just like you need this. Go into this room. And we'll do a thing for you, and they don't even give you much explanation about it at all. That's sad.
No, it is. And actually, part of my story, when I got in there for the abortion that day, they told me to tell them when I felt a pinch. And that wasn't something that I was prepped for. Now, when you get in there, this is what's going to happen. So, yeah, I panicked, obviously. But so we talk about what they should have learned about their procedure. We talk about, what would the due date have been? And we just begin to look at those things. And those can be scary things, but what they find is it brings a lot of closure to some unanswered questions that they have. And that's what begins to let some of those emotions heal as well. But it also can stir up anger. And so we talk about anger, and there's somewhat healthy ways to look at anger. And we look at biblically anger. God was angry, but it was always a just anger. And our anger is not always just. However, in the context of abortion, there's a lot of reasons we should be angry.
Oh, sure.
But then right away, we have to go into the next week talking about forgiveness. And this is where I see a huge turnaround. It's like we no longer are focused on the horror of this abortion. We begin to focus on the child. Because we let go of all that emotional stuff that we had never processed, the anger, the fear, the unforgiveness. And all of a sudden now we can think about this child. And so we spend 2 weeks just talking about grief.
So would you say, and that's, you bring up that word, that's what I was just going to ask you. Is it really what I feel like you're doing is you're giving a woman the opportunity to grieve?
Exactly.
Whereas maybe she has suppressed even her right or her, her thoughts that I should do this. Maybe she doesn't feel like she deserves to. And so she's literally kind of robbed of an experience in that just
exactly.
She doesn't get to process it right.
Mm-hmm. And I know personally for my own grieving, it was several weeks, and it was hard to even go to a park and see a small child because all of a sudden I would start to think about that age of their life that I missed, the little hand I didn't get a hold.
Right.
And those were all feelings that for years I suppressed. And then all of a sudden I allowed myself to go there. And some women think it's scary because they wonder if they will ever stop crying. But it's a normal part of losing somebody. And I tell the ladies, just like someone that's lost a child through a stillborn death or even a toddler or, at any age, there's the grieving, and it's and it doesn't just stop. There's a quote in this book that says, grief is something we don't get over, we get through.
Yeah.
And it comes in waves,
Yep.
I've had to recently grieve that I should have been a grandmother by now, potentially,
Wow.
and the wedding that I didn't get to plan, and all of those things that you don't think about when you're making this horrible decision. So after they go through it's about 8 weeks of this, they have the option, and I strongly encourage it. We have a reconciliation weekend where we talk about reconciling with God, others involved in the abortion decision, ourselves, and ultimately the child that we lost. And we end the weekend with a memorial service where they get to honor their child. And lots of times they feel impressed that they know if it's a girl or boy, and they'll give it a name. And we treat them, we pamper them, we have gift bags for them, and we just want them to feel loved and valued and safe. And we have a facility that lets us come, and we have the whole place to ourselves, so they don't have to worry about any intruders during the time we're there. And we go. It starts on a Friday and ends Sunday at lunchtime, and it's just a beautiful time. It just brings that finished little piece to the process.
So this weekend is for the women, but then you said it's also for people who were involved in that abortion decision, or
No, now I do encourage women, especially if they're married to the father of the baby that they aborted, their husbands can come along. And for the memorial service, I tell them they can invite, if they want to, their parents or their spouse or whoever.
Wow.
And so, and it's up to them if they want to do that or not. It's
so
totally
you have a
their choice.
memorial service for their baby.
Yes.
that was aborted.
Yes.
How cool is that?
That is really cool.
That is awesome.
It is, and it's what I can say is what you're providing is the closure they never got.
Exactly.
They get the experience, in that moment, in that reconciliation weekend, to really do what everybody else does when they go and bury a loved one.
Yes.
They have that final moment by the graveside. They have that service and they didn't have any of that. In fact, all they had was shame and secrecy, darkness, pain, and you're providing just a complete turnaround of all of that. That is such a cool thing.
Yeah, and I always tell people, as hard as it is to hear their stories, because there's so much pain involved, and to watch them walk through that grief, it's so beautiful because they come out the other side, and it's like I wish I could you can see it on them physically if you could only see what their heart looks like, because there's definitely change in even how they carry themselves. It's an amazing thing.
Oh, absolutely. And we're talking with Laura Limmex. We're talking about Restored by Grace Ministries. She's describing for us this reconciliation weekend that they do, which is kind of the culmination of taking women through an 8-week journey, basically, of finding out what God's grace is all about again.
Absolutely.
And that is so powerful. It's incredible. And when we come back from the break, I want you to share with us some stories that you've seen of how women have just come full circle in this. And that's exciting. So we're in studio here, and we want to hear from you. Have you ever heard of Restored by Grace? Chances are you definitely know somebody that needs to hear about this ministry.
It's Mikey, he's better than TV. We're listening to Mikey, and best of all, it's free.
You're listening to FaithWorks Live, and that was my mother-in-law, Linda Curry, the best jingle writer on the North American continent. So, I've been telling you that this Sunday is Mother's Day. What are you going to do to show your mom how much you care for her? FaithWorks Live and 99.3 The Truth want to help by giving one of our listeners a free bouquet of roses. To enter the drawing for a free bouquet of roses, send us a brief text telling us what your mom means to you. Our text line is 515-727-KTIA. That's 515-727-5842. And we're going to announce the winner on Thursday, so send us a brief text telling us what your mom means to you. The text line again, 515-727-KTIA. That's 515-727-5842. We are talking today in studio. My daughter-in-law, Rachel Damastis, is here with us, and so is Laura Limmex, the director of Restored by Grace. And she was telling us about the powerful journey that women go on when they get involved in this. They go through an 8-week experience of going through a study, basically, relearning things, really. Relearning what love is, what grace is, all those kinds of things. And then it culminates in an experience where you have what was the weekend you call it?
A reconciliation.
A reconciliation weekend. And part of that experience is having a memorial service even for the baby that was aborted, that was lost.
Yeah.
And so this is a very, very powerful thing. So tell me about, you've seen this now. How many times have you done this?
The weekends?
Maybe how many years?
Well, I've been, my first group I took through was in 2011.
Okay.
So I've been doing this for about 6 years. And I think I've done 5 weekends. So, and we have anywhere, I think the maximum we had was 8. You want to keep the group small because we want everyone to have opportunity to share. If it gets too big, there's easy for someone to kind of, especially an introvert, to be kind of withdrawn. So we try and keep both the 8-week study and the weekends small. So everybody just kind of makes it a little more intimate as well.
Sure.
But
sure.
yeah, and it's an amazing thing to see a woman come. And I've gotten with ladies, I usually try and get with them even before we sit down our first week in that 8-week study and just kind of meet them. And they tell me later how they were so afraid to even come and meet me. That's a very, very common thing. And how then, why we're about 2 weeks into the class and, they hug me as they're leaving or whatever.
Wow.
So we all quickly develop bonds. And it's almost one of those things too, that for a woman that's had an abortion, there's a few things she fears. One is rejection. And so when you come into a group that accepts you, knows all of your story, and still is willing to hug you or meet with you each week,
that's huge.
It's huge for them. So that's a big thing that I see, is just that overcoming the fear of rejection within the group. And then I talk to them about, when you talk to other people and they don't respond maybe the way you expect them or think they should. I've never had anyone throw tomatoes at me when I've shared, but I always have to look at it too, that I know how Christ has accepted me now.
Right.
And so sometimes, especially if it's in the church, if they don't accept us, it's a reflection of their immaturity in the things of the Lord, and not a reflection of the woman that's sharing her story.
And that's right. And I think that, it's something that a lot of Christians forget, and when you read through 1 Corinthians chapter 6, you read the list of, these are the people that aren't going to heaven, and you read through that list, and they forget that latter part when Paul says that little phrase, and such were some of you. And that's the really critical thing, is a lot of Christians can kind of get focused on, you made such a terrible decision, you did such a horrible thing, and you need to feel bad or whatever. And that's a terrible, terrible approach, because we forget what God's done for us.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when we know He looks at us through His eyes of mercy and grace.
That's right. And that's who He is. He is a God of grace. He's abounding in mercy. He's abounding in grace. And so that's a powerful thing. And so you have seen some women that have come through this, and you've seen probably some dramatic changes. Can you share with us one or two stories?
Yeah. I had a lady come through, there had been a lot of just abuse in her life, and she actually was forced by her parents to have an abortion in her early teens. And she was young enough that it created a lot of trauma. And every year on the month of that the abortion had occurred, she would have nightmares all month long. And after she went through the program, she no longer had the nightmares.
Wow.
It was, amazing. Only God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. And for her, that was something, she almost was fearing every time that, that month of the year would come along. So it was a huge thing, a huge bit of freedom for her. And she's just, she was a beautiful lady, just God's doing good things, and I'm excited for her. Another thing, I've had ladies email me after the weekend, say, boy, I came home from the weekend and I have all of this joy, and I've never felt such joy. It's almost like they had let themselves not connect with that emotion of feeling happy about life.
Right.
And all of a sudden they get to connect with joy again. I could tell you stories on both sides. I've had women come and they'll share just the deceitfulness of the abortion industry, which is awful. They've, especially with the new RU486, a lot of times they'll have to do an ultrasound. I had one gal that I work with quite a bit. She actually, hoping that she's going to be able to come alongside and lead some groups here soon, but she had an RU486. They did the ultrasound and they told her, do you want to see the baby? And so she said yes. Well, she was about at the 8-9 week mark, and they showed her just a blob of tissue, which my understanding is that you can find anyone's blob of tissue in their stomach. She now volunteers at a crisis pregnancy center and helps do ultrasounds. And she's seeing those little babies 8-9 weeks.
Right.
That there's little arms, And the first time that happened was actually, it was like 5 years to the month and almost the week of her abortion. And she called me and she was crying afterwards. But at the same time, it was so healing that there was no longer the lie. She'd been told a lie, and now she had the truth. And I was like saying, we get to take in this ministry and exchange all those lies for truth.
That's right.
And because that's what so many of them bought into with their abortion decision, was a lot of lies. And so we get to uncover truth, and that's a beautiful thing.
That's the song, I'm Trading My Sorrows. I love that song. It comes straight out of Scripture, and It's a great song. I think about just to say with what Rachel gets to see. She gets to see that same thing at times when women come in to have an ultrasound, at Agape, and that's one of, I believe, at least, maybe you can add in on this, I believe it's one of the most powerful tools that a pregnancy center has, is to be able to have that ability to help a woman to see the life that's inside of her.
Because what's interesting is no matter where you're at, a baby that's 8 weeks along looks the same. But, at Agape, we see that baby and we see life and we see all that potential that little human's going to do. But at another building a place that performs abortions, they see the blob of tissue, but they're just looking at the exact same thing. Yeah. And that's what I think is so incredible about ultrasounds, is that although we're looking at the same thing, we can see that life and we can show women that life. Women I've talked to, and I'm sure you too, have had abortions in the past. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it. So what would you say to a woman to encourage her to come on one of these retreats, to go through this program, if it's in the past and she kind of doesn't want to bring it up again?
Mm-hmm. I've had lots of women tell me that, I've dealt with it. Especially in the church, they'll say, well, I know I'm forgiven. What more is there? And I just would say that there is more there. What we don't understand is that decision to go against the very nature of our being as a woman, to protect our young. That decision is affecting more areas of their life than they can imagine. It's affecting relationships. It's affecting how they parent their child today. It's affecting, the anger that they have. And a lot of women find that there's rage and they don't know, why do I get so mad? And I had a lady go through the program that by the end of it, she told me she had struggled so much with rage and she didn't know why her husband even stayed with her. But when she was all done, she says, I don't have that rage anymore. She says, she does. I mean, it's like you have to feel to heal. And if you never connect with that anger and admit it's there, how do you ever heal it? And so I would just say to those women that there's something in it for everyone. Whatever that might look like, even if it's just waiting to that last weekend to be able to honor your child in a way it always deserved.
Right.
There's something in it for you.
Well, I think it's a really powerful thing, what it is that you do and how it is that you help other women. When we come back, I want to address the fact that we have women in need in every church across America, definitely right here in Des Moines and Ankeny and all around in our listening audience. Every church has women that need this ministry, because the statistics would tell us 1 in 5 women have had an abortion. And so that's huge when you think about that. And that doesn't mean all those women are at the place where they've dealt with this in a way that God has helped them be restored fully. So we're going to talk about that right when we come back.
From Altoona to Windsor Heights, you can hear us, so why not join us? Call or text 515-727-KTIA.
I've tried to do my own plumbing jobs before, and they always end with the same result: epic fail. Plumbing is just a challenge. It's difficult. But thankfully, there is an incredibly reputable company that specializes in plumbing: Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. Nathan Shanks, the owner, makes it a point to deliver first-rate service to his residential and commercial clients. No matter what the project is, no matter how minute the issue may be, Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing will leave you 100% satisfied. In fact, their customers are deeply loyal, and much of their business comes from referrals from satisfied customers. Call Baldwin Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing today to get your plumbing issues off your back, and your wife will love you for it. The number to call is 515-371-4036. That's 515-371-4036. You're listening to FaithWorks Live, and I'm your host, Michael Damastis. And we are in studio today with my daughter-in-law, Rachel, and Laura Limmex, who is the head of Restored by Grace Ministries. We've been talking about that for this entire hour. And as I said, as we went into break, that there is 1 in 5 women who have had an abortion statistically across the United States. That means that every single church almost is going to have a woman sitting in that building, many of whom are going to be in the position that you described yourself in. This is a deep, dark secret that I am never going to let out. And, one question I have is, and, we talked about this off air, is why is the church, why is it not a safe place? Why is that?
I wish I had the perfect answer. I think there's a lot of churches that won't talk about it because it's not a politically correct. Actually, there's a church in the Des Moines area that I was supposed to share at it was a bigger ladies event, and I was just supposed to do a 2-3 minute commercial. But they said, no, that's a social justice issue. We don't talk about that here.
Wow.
And so I think that
that's so sad.
It is. So I think there's a piece of that in the church. I know that some churches hold back out of fear of hurting a woman. They don't know how to tactfully address it.
You're helping women. Why would that be considered hurting a woman when you're wanting to help them from the hurt they're sitting in?
I understand what you're saying.
It makes me want to throat punch a pastor that would say that. That's so bad. I'm a pastor, and we in our church, we're doing everything we possibly can to create a culture of life, and we realize that we want to rescue babies. But that can't be the only focus we have, because we've also got to minister to the women who have been hurt and are hurting.
And I think
because of abortion.
That's the important piece, not just talk about the horror of abortion and the baby, which is horrible, yes, but also about the victim that's still trying to navigate these waters after abortion.
And I would say that one thing, when Rachel, we had the director of Agape come on, and she said this, don't forget about the man.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he is, honestly, he's the one that we never ever talk about either. It's, a lot of guys a woman will choose to have an abortion much against their will. They don't want it. They're desperately wanting her to choose to have this baby, but they have no say and they have no right in that. And so, there's a lot of hurt there's plenty that goes around in the abortion industry. But, those that I would say are on the front lines of the hurt are those that have gone through the experience of having had an abortion.
Yeah.
And man, there's just so much need for help. So how does a woman find out about Restored by Grace?
Well, avenues like this,
Sure.
As well as lots of times I go in and maybe share with a women's group in a church, or I don't know, some churches have just, they'll highlight a local ministry and those types of things. I do have some brochures and some business cards I try and get out, but it's not that easy. Like I said, not every church is going to let you in their doors, but a lot of it's word of mouth,
Right.
Some of the women that have been through the ministry's program, then they tell someone they know about it.
Oh,
and
sure.
so there's a lot of that happens, but I'm probably not real good at promoting I'm myself, but
is there a website?
I do. I have a website. It is restoredbygraceministries.com.
All one word, restoredbygraceministries.com.
.com.
Okay. And on that website, what kind of things are there for
I share
a
a little bit of my story. It talks about all the different aspects of the ministry. I have a blog on there that if you go back far enough,
Interesting.
there's some more of my story that I've shared. Let's see what else is on there. There's some testimonies from some gals that have been through the class. And
so if women are interested and they want more information, they want to talk to you, best to go through the website, best to email you?
Either way, website or email, and it's just Laura at restoredbygraceministries.com. They can find me on Facebook, Restored by Grace, on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have a Facebook page.
I have a lot of people that reach out to me there through Messenger, and those are all wonderful avenues. Perfect.
Sure. Okay. And so how does, we want to know more about, what you do, but I'm getting onto the website and I want to get in on a class. What do I do? I mean, what is that? Do I find out from the website?
There should be a contact place, and you can just email me.
Okay.
It's Laura at restoredbygraceministries.com.
Do you have like a class that's ongoing all the time, or is there, is it just, you do it certain times of the year?
It depends on how, because I will do it one-on-one, but it helps a lot if we have at least
in a
two.
group. Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah.
And so sometimes I might have a lady approach me and I'll say, okay, great, we're going to get one going as soon as I get one more person. Do you know if anybody that wants to come along with you? Or, I'll, network and see if I can find somebody else that is ready to go through. Because I have a list of ladies that have shared with me, they had an abortion, but they haven't been through the class yet. So,
Are you shouldering this all by yourself? I mean,
I have a small, like for a reconciliation weekend, I have a team of about 5 of us that go
nice.
and help. And my husband is a huge part. He kind of ends up being the dad or the brother or the guy that's safe in the room
Sure.
for the ladies. And that's very healing because a lot of them have issues with men.
Oh, yeah.
And so to have someone that they see cry, I mean, he'll cry when he hears their stories. It breaks his heart
yeah.
too. So, that just is healing for them that, wow, this man feels compassion for my situation. That is a big thing. So
How can people and churches help you and help your ministry?
that's a good question too. Prayer is always important because this is something that the enemy does not want these ladies free from. So prayer is huge. But also, I honestly, I would love to have 3 or 4 churches just support me simply, a very small, even if it's just, I don't know, $20, $25 a month. That covers the expenses because of books and materials and retreat
absolutely.
weekends. Because what I find is so many of these women are single moms or they've been through several, marriages and they're financially tight. And I always tell the ladies, I never want finances to be an excuse not to be a part of this. So I want everything to be covered. And so those are just a few ways. To do the program, the Bible study, the 8 weeks is $30, and they have 3 books. It's a book that they read, a devotional,
awesome.
and then a workbook. And then a weekend reconciliation weekend is $150, and that
Awesome.
covers meals for the weekend. They have
so
a
that's
private room.
for
and-
$200. You're covering 8 weeks of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible if you think about that. That's an incredible thing. So you definitely want to be able to help scholarship women through that where the financial part of that is going to be a difficult
Absolutely.
thing. And there are ways, I'm assuming, either by contacting you, or is there a way to give online on the website?
There is a way online.
Okay, great,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
So that would be perfect. I want to give you a challenge, listeners. If you're listening to the show right now, you're hearing about this ministry and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so needed. This is so important. Go right now to restoredbygraceministries.com, and why don't you just give them what you were going to get in Starbucks this week? Just forego that and drink a bottle of water. You'll be better off anyways. And give them some money to help them continue ministering to women who desperately need to know about the grace of God. They are in prison and they're sitting in a cell and they don't realize that the door is actually unlocked. And they are in there on their own, and we need to show them through ministries like this that they can just walk right out. God has invited them out of that cell. And so, man, I can't think of a more valuable ministry that you are doing. And it just, I kind of feel weird because I want to be more manly than I'm being right now, because I feel like I'm about to cry, because it's like so powerful what you do. And I know there's so many women that are listening that either know this is a powerful ministry or know people that need this ministry. So go to restoredbygraceministries.com, support this ministry, support what Laura is doing. There is nothing more important than this. We've got to get more of God's grace out there in the world. And I want to thank you, listeners, for joining us today for our conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. God bless.